Welcome back. Now, although great strides are being made to tackle at least some of the issues around men's mental health, toxic masculinity and the lack of seeking help have resulted in some men turning to inappropriate coping mechanisms such as substance abuse, violent behaviour and sometimes even suicide. Now, according to the South African Society of Psychiatrists report, out of the more than 13,700 mental health related deaths that were reported in South Africa in 2019, over 10,000 of those, which is 10,800 to be exact, were actually men. And with June being a Men's Mental Health Month, our Health Matters this morning is focused on tackling and taking a closer look at men's mental illness and, of course, some of the underlying conditions. And we're joined in studio by Mervin Canham, who is the founder of the Holding Space Project. And joining us virtually is clinical psychologist Oscar Motswage. And thanks so much to both of you, Mervin and Oscar, for joining us this morning. So, Oscar, there you are. Good morning. So, thanks so much for being with us. Let me start with you, Oscar, just in terms of trying to locate just how intense this problem is, because all women will tell you that when it comes to their health, men, unlike women, are not too forthcoming. You know, with women, we even talk to each other about our issues. You know, we will seek out the sort of help that we need. With men, it doesn't happen that readily. Or am I wrong on that score?
No, you are correctly right. First of all, thank you for having me, and good morning to your viewers. You are right. I think this goes back to how men are socialized, you know, in our society. Men are socialized in a way that they don't speak about their feelings. And I think when a person speaks about their feelings, it's seen as, you know, being weak, more especially when it comes to men. And that's why you find that females or women are more likely to open up, you know, and talk about how they feel to each other. Whereas with us men, we are socialized not to talk about our feelings. Like I said, it may come across as if, you know, you are weak if you talk about your struggles or how you feel.
And let's talk to that, you know, this notion of being weak for simply voicing out how you feel. Yes, it's socialization, but we're in 2024. Why are we still grappling with that aspect, especially given that most men today were raised by women and probably in a women-headed household? So why are we still struggling with that, do you think, Oscar?
I think it's, remember, even though you are raised by a woman or female, but remember your social setting determines how you sort of behave. So even though we are in 2024, but the society sort of dictates how we behave, you know. For instance, a boy child was raised by a single parent, a female, a mother rather. When they go out, remember now they've got friends, they've got peers who do not come from the same environment. And that's how we sort of learn our social skills from the outside. And I think that be a factor in terms of how we then, you know, see ourselves in relation to the world.
And that is so real. You know, I remember years ago watching an episode of Dr. Phil Mervin, where he was talking about the most powerful role model in a child's life being the same-sex parent. And when women are raising these young men, they're still going outside to look for that same-sex person, a role model around whom they will model who they are. And you've started an organization, Mervin, the Holding Space. Talk to us about that and your own struggle with depression.
So basically it started from a place of pain, my own pain, my pain of losing a brother through suicide. 21 years ago. And yeah, it was basically, okay, so how do I turn this pain into my power? And then hence the Holding Space Project, but also belonging to a men's organization called the Mankind Project. And these spaces, and also growing up where I grew up, growing up in El Dorado Park, one of those stereotypes and one of those things or expected is I can't show my feelings. I have to be hard. I have to behave a certain way. And these platforms gave me that safe place as a man to talk about the truth of what's going on for me. So hence the Holding Space and bring it into public. And we've been running for about a year and a half. And yeah, I mean, we're in a pandemic where men are committing suicide. And it's scary. So how, like, what are we doing about that? So that's where it came from, the platform and creating these spaces in around Joburg for men to feel safe and to feel heard, and also to break away the loneliness of our struggles, you know, that it's no longer in isolation, that when it's shared, other men can relate to that and kind of go, oh, I can relate to this, man. I feel what you're feeling. You know.
But are men coming out? Because as Oscar says, it goes back to the socialization.
Yeah.
And there inevitably would be some sort of stigma attached to, you know, men now suddenly congregating to talk about their feelings, so to speak.
And you know what's really interesting about that is women are sending men to Holding Space.
Of course we will send them, because we can see that, listen, you need help. But you know, if you say they are coming, even though the women are sending them, are they open to receiving what it is that you have to offer in these spaces?
Because I think through modeling what vulnerability looks like, if I'm vulnerable, it also allows other men to be vulnerable, do you know what I mean? And to feel safe in the space. And what's said in the space is confidential, so whatever's said here stays here. And we don't tell men how to be men. We don't sit there and kind of, you know, proclaim to be gurus on what's it like to be a man. No, we are imperfect men in an imperfect world, but also just to speak the truth of what's really going on in our hearts, what's going on around our thoughts, around, I mean, you know, I sit with men who have suicidal thoughts or who want to hurt themselves, who feel less than, do you know what I mean? I mean, there's so many aspects of being a man. The way we were told also, we need to provide, we need to, you know, we need to show up in a way that the world wants us to show up. And if you don't show up according to the way the world wants us to show up, what happens is then I'm not good enough. I'm less than, you know.
I'm very curious about that, because so you allow men into the safe space where they are able to be vulnerable without any judgment. But what happens when they go back into the real world, so to speak? Do they take those lessons with them?
Definitely.
Or do they go out there and still feel, I still need to be that guy who needs to show up in a certain way, be a macho man, you know, be someone who's able to provide, not show their feelings? You know, how do we ensure that outside of that safe space, men are still okay to show those feelings, Oscar?
I think it goes back to constantly checking in with each other. You know, I like the idea of having men in a safe space to speak about their feelings or troubles. But even outside, I think we need to create a safe space where we sort of check in with each other. I normally use this in therapy, and I found it to be very useful, you know, just to check in, you know, not only when we are together, but even when you're home, I can just send you a text and check in. Are you still fine? You know, are you still okay? Is everything still okay with you? And I think that sort of helps us to normalize talking about our feelings, you know, and it's not just something that happens in that space, but even outside that space. And I think that could be very, very helpful for many men. You know, it could be very helpful where the conversation. So what I'm trying to say is that the conversation in that safe space still continues even outside.
I tell you what, it's tough for women and it's tough for children as well, because the reality is we are dealing with broken men, Oscar.
Yeah.
We
True.
marry these broken men. And suddenly you find yourself in a situation where you as a woman don't know what to do, because not only are you trying to raise children, build a household, but you're dealing with a broken man that requires a lot of attention from you as well. And this is not something that you signed up for as a wife. So I'm curious to hear your view, Oscar, but from your side as well, Mervin. Do you talk about these things in those safe spaces in terms of how men show up in the home, how they show up for their children, for their spouses, and what it is that they struggle with?
Sure. And yeah, I mean, to answer your question, men do speak about their struggles at home. Men do speak about their struggles because, I think there's no manual on how to be a man, or,
True.
so all of us are trying to do our best. But I hear you around, when you speak about broken men, and you kind of have to mother this man and, take care of him. And I guess that's why these platforms are there, for us to talk about our struggles, to talk about, our traumas, and understanding those traumas and how they impact us in our lives today. I mean, part of my trauma is part of that story I told myself was I'm not good enough, and also in school, school told me that I'm stupid, I'm dumb, there's something wrong with me. And then what happens is I play that out in my adult life, and then I'm in a relationship, and and now my woman has to affirm me all the time and tell me how wonderful I am. But obviously, this work is internal. So a lot of the internal work is where, therapy is those platforms. But also, we live in the society, the world we live in is so unequal, where there's certain men who can't access those spaces as therapy. So that's why we've created Holding Space. Is for men in need and men with all these struggles, that they can come and they can show up and they can talk about whatever's going on for them with other men and be witnessed. There's also something very sacred about being witnessed by other men, in a beautiful way. You talk about, Oscar spoke about, checking up on each other. That's what it's about. Also, the space allows us to, if a man's in crisis, there's a certain number he can type in. We've got a WhatsApp group, he can type in and someone will take it offline with the man and call him and check in on him, that kind of stuff. So what I like about what we're doing is it's not pipe dreams. It's something basic, it's realistic, and it's not like we're selling you this thing, how to be this perfect man. It's not Hollywood. We're all imperfect men, and we're just doing our best.
And I'd love you to weigh in on that, Oscar, but also to talk about, how the cycle perpetuates, because now we're raising children, we're raising boy children who see some of these things, who are angry at the world because of the way things play out. Maybe he doesn't like the way he sees his father treating his mother or abusing his mother, doesn't know how to give expression to how he's feeling. And suddenly you have this child who's acting out in all sorts of ways. And that is a huge problem as well in our communities, with young men acting out in different ways.
Sure.
Yeah, I think I just want to touch on what the guest said. I think stigma, for me, stigma is something that, or let me just break down what stigma is. That feeling of being judged. If I speak about my problem, if I tell you about my problem, I will be judged because of I'm going through this. And I think if we can create an environment where men are able to feel safe, not judged, even in the homes, even in the workplace or wherever, I believe that will sort of create a platform for men to talk about whatever that they're going through. The stigma comes in when you feel that if I say this, I might be judged, But we need to normalize speaking about, our feelings and speaking about whatever that we we struggle with, and in a safe space, in a safe space. And I think that could really be helpful, for many men, yeah, I think that could really help a lot of people, to start speaking about their feelings, and also sharing, because when you share your feelings, I like what he said also, that when you now see another man or you hear another man talking about their struggles, it sort of normalizes your own struggles. You feel like, I'm not the only one who's going through this.
No,
I'm
definitely.
not the only one. And yeah.
And that affirmation is a powerful one. I wish we had more time to talk more about this, because I do believe it is such an important conversation, a conversation that we don't have often enough. And what we'll do is we'll get details of Mervin's organization. Mervin is the founder of the Holding Space Project, and Oscar Motswage is clinical psychologist, and they were talking to us about men's mental health issues and some of the interventions and awareness that needs to be had, and getting men to speak out more. And that's where, unfortunately, we have to leave it for this morning, but we'll put Mervin's details up so that you can get in touch. All right, we at this point are already saying goodbye, Leanne.
We are indeed, and we've got to say goodbye, because unfortunately, I don't think we want to. This is such an important conversation, and thanks to you and your guests, I'm sure we've opened a lot of people's eyes about this one.